What's it like to spend 24 hours in Delta Airlines' best seat?
Hello, jet setters. Let's start the clock on 24 hours in Delta One. I'm Jeb Brooks from greenergrass.com. Let's head to Australia.
We'll begin this trip in Atlanta, Georgia, before flying to Los Angeles, California. Then, we'll fly all the way to Sydney, Australia. If everything goes according to plan, it'll take exactly 24 hours and cover more than 9,400 miles.
So a 24-hour trip sounds like a really long time, but when you think about we're going across the world, it kind of blows your mind.
Journey begins here in Atlanta, and our plane is coming in from LA. So let's go see if we can catch the plane as it's pulling into the gate.
This A350 is Delta's flagship airplane, and we're excited to be on board in the airline's best business class seat for these 24 hours. It's especially exciting that it all starts on this domestic leg.
You know, it's not often that you find a wide body on a domestic leg, but you sure are lucky when you are, and we have today.
And this airplane that's going to take us to LA is actually taking us all the way to Sydney.
The airplane came in a little late from Los Angeles, and it's taking a little longer to clean, so we are facing a bit of a delay here, unfortunately. I have to say, delays have been a little bit more common in my Delta flying experience lately than they have been in the past, which is too bad. Hopefully the operation gets a little smoother, but we'll be getting out of here to LA pretty soon.
And sure enough, we did. We began boarding about an hour late, and that's also when we started our clock. Thankfully, we had a long enough layover in LA that this setback shouldn't be too much of a problem for us.
First impressions, so spacious, so airy in here. This is going to be a great home for 24 hours.
We're actually in these skiing seats for the next leg from LA to Sydney.
And they're pretty epic seats. They're staggered, with odd-numbered ones, like mine, being closer to the window. We'll have plenty of time to explore them, but with such a long flight ahead of us, I thought a cup of coffee would be the right pre-departure beverage.
Aircraft got in about an hour late, so that pushes everything back. Apologize for that inconvenience. Our flying time today will be 4 hours and 4 minutes to Los Angeles.
The start of any journey is special, but one that goes this far and this much comfort is particularly exciting. Now, if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, we hope you will. This is the beginning of a trip we're taking completely around the world. We'll even travel on one of the world's most iconic trains along the way. Delta has made a huge deal out of offering free Wi-Fi across its entire network. Unfortunately, these A350s aren't quite there yet. For $20, I could have had access for this flight across the country, which I would have happily paid. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it to work. I'm hoping it'll work on the long flight across the Pacific, but time will tell. The headphones worked fine, as did the recline feature of the seat. Now, there weren't as many options of the in-flight entertainment as Delta once had, but I found plenty to occupy me for 24 hours. Service began with drinks and a snack about an hour and 40 minutes since we boarded. In case you're not sure what this cloth the flight attendants put on your table is, it's helpfully labeled. About a week before the flight, we were invited to pre-order lunch. Suzanne and I both went for the short rib. Catering is one thing Delta has going for it in a big way. They do a great job of partnering with talented chefs in their hub cities, which yields really delicious food. And the short rib was no exception. Although I didn't feel the need to finish the banana pudding. After lunch, I took a stroll through the cabin. In economy, you'll find a 3-3-3 layout. There's also a premium select cabin arranged in a more couples-friendly 2-4-2 configuration. And of course, in Delta One, you'll find this 1-2-1 arrangement. I turned on the Do Not Disturb sign and closed the door. Now, it's not like this is a fully enclosed suite, so the doors don't completely block people from looking in. But they do add a nice degree of privacy, especially when you're sleeping. We feel so fortunate to make this trip in these incredible seats, and we booked them using miles, which makes the whole experience even more amazing. Our flight from LA to Sydney is on this exact same plane, and we've booked the same seats. To prove it, I'm going to sign this napkin, hide it, and find it on the next flight. At around the 4.5-hour mark, we started our descent into LAX. Qantas is currently working on Project Sunrise. That's their effort to provide non-stop flights from the US East Coast and London all the way to Sydney without the need for a stop in the middle like this. Those flights could approach 24 hours in the air. We recently flew from JFK to Auckland. That flight was nearly 18 hours long. Now, breaking up a long journey like we are today allows passengers to stretch their legs or even schedule a longer layover. But which do you think you'd prefer? Breaking up a long flight with a stop in the middle like this, or once Qantas is able to complete Project Sunrise, would you prefer that, flying straight through? But at least for now, we were ready to get off the plane and explore LAX.
Short connection, already at our next gate.
So we're about 5 hours into our 24-hour journey. That flight didn't feel too long. Maybe it's because I'm kind of mentally preparing myself for the next one. What did you think?
I feel like I was on edge because we were delayed departing Atlanta, but then, we just settled into it. And this is what a cancellation looks like. That's tough. Let's hope our plane goes.
Is it bad that our first thought was that's a line for the Sky Club?
Thankfully, it wasn't. Unfortunately, a flight to Tokyo had canceled.
There's very little I love more in the world than a new Sky Club, and this is new to me, so let's check it out together.
Even though it's been open for about a year, this was my first time visiting, and I have to say, it's pretty amazing. There's tons of interesting art, a reasonable amount of seating, of course, and a couple of bars, but best of all, sweeping views of the action at Terminal 3 here at LAX.
I've never been to an LA nightclub, but this is kind of what I picture it might be like, at least in my perfect world.
Do LA nightclubs have buffets? Well, if so, this one fits. It was a veritable smorgasbord of options. We, of course, decided to save room for food on the plane.
This takes the cake. This is the best Delta Sky Club, hands down. We've changed.
Ready for flight.
Suzanne has just said she's getting tired, and we don't have time for that.
Starting to fade a little.
We can't do that. We cannot do that.
With 16 or 17 hours left to go, we can sleep in Australia.
How do you deal with the jet lag?
All right, so I think that jet lag is kind of a myth.
Here we go again.
What do I know? I'm just a guy who flies around a lot. Let's do it. Let's board this bird. Next stop, Sydney.
While they were the same seats, we had a bit more to explore on this leg. Because this is an international flight branded as Delta 1, we found bedding, slippers, an amenity kit, and a bottle of water waiting for us, not to mention a special treat.
Cheers. Here's to Dennis Bunning.
If you don't know Dennis, keep watching. We met up in Australia. He's my YouTube inspiration.
Board flight number 41 to Sydney, Australia. Flight time from takeoff to touchdown 14 hours and 28 minutes.
Leaving the California coast behind is always an epic part of a trip to Australia. Next time we see land, we'll be on our final approach into Sydney. Fortunately, the Wi-Fi worked on this leg, and at less than $2 more than the price for the transcontinental leg, it worked really well and was pretty reasonably priced. I was grateful to remain connected throughout this 14-hour flight. The amenity kit was pretty basic, but I was glad to see a pen included. That's always a handy addition. But it was the eye shade that I got the most use out of on this trip. Service began nearly 10 hours into our trip, only about 30 minutes after departure. My menu had been printed upside down, but no problem. I'd already pre-ordered. The meatballs for me, of course, and the chicken parm for Suzanne. If you'd like more time with the menu, head over to greenergrass.com/menus. While my meatballs came out almost instantaneously, I hadn't even gotten a chance to try the nuts before this was on my tray. Suzanne had to wait forever. She was literally the last person to be served in this whole cabin because of some issue with the oven not working. It's too bad, because both dishes were really good and provided even more evidence that Delta's catering game is at the top of the food chain among U.S. carriers. As beds, these seats are okay. In bed mode, they're not as comfortable as the seats on Air New Zealand. The footwells are a bit narrow, and I do wish Delta would join United in providing more than one pillow on long-haul flights. But about 10 and a half hours into our 24, Suzanne kicked me out of her suite and I went to bed myself. Neither of us had any trouble falling asleep. 6 hours later, I woke up. Delta's midnight snack is a pizza. It's not even the same atmosphere as dinner, but I was grateful for it anyway. Then I went back to sleep for a few hours before waking up again.
Well, that was a pretty good night's sleep. I really just love sleeping on A350s and Dreamliners. Keep them pressurized to a lower altitude, humidity's higher, so it generally leads to a better night of sleep than on some of the older airplanes. I still have a few more hours left.
So I brushed my teeth, had a cup of coffee, watched a little more on the IFE, and took in the sunrise. Then it was time for breakfast, and this was really good. One of my favorite meals of the entire trip, believe it or not. Just proof that breakfast on a plane can be really good. And as we make our way into Sydney, that means it's time for the JebScore. This unscientific method for rating flights like this is completely subjective. I mean, is it really fair to rate an airline based on one flight, or in this case, two? Of course not, but we're going to do it anyway. First, the lounge. Its LA nightclub vibe was definitely cool, and the sky deck was a highlight. Now, even though I named it the best club in Delta's network, it only earns 4 stars. You see, unlike Polaris lounges, there's no a la carte dining. Next, the seat. It's spacious and modern. In bed mode, it was satisfactory, but not mind-blowing. The doors make all the seats, regardless of location, private. All that being said, this seat earns 5 stars. The IFE screen was large, bright, and easy to use. Unfortunately, there aren't as many options as there were in the past. We found plenty to watch, but had to look harder than in years past. You see, much of the content was older and has been on airplanes for a long time now. It's incredible there's Wi-Fi across the Pacific Ocean. The IFE earns 4 stars. The food is Delta's shining star right now. It may not be the most amazing presentation, but the taste is 5 stars all day long. Finally, the service. On our first leg, everyone was friendly and efficient during lunch, but for the rest of the flight, we didn't see much of anyone. During the second flight, the long one, the crew were hardworking and got everyone to bed quickly. Overall, the service on this 24-hour extravaganza earns 4 stars. So that leaves Delta with a total of 22 out of 25 possible stars.
After 24 extraordinary hours on board Delta, we've made it to Australia. We traveled on to Adelaide, the incredible capital of South Australia, a city you've got to add to your bucket list. We were fortunate to hang out with YouTube sensation, great friend, and fabulous tour guide, Dennis Bunnick.
I can make anything sound good, including Adelaide, but actually it is a fantastic place to visit. Do yourself a favour, put South Australia and Adelaide on your list.
Between now and the next time,
see you in the sky.
I want them to see my shirt.
oh, I'm starting, aren't I?
Okay, yeah.
We're not actually spending 24 hours to see a connection. Yeah. Technicalities.